Good afternoon. I'm Shannon Derejo from Creamer Media Webinars. Welcome to today's webinar hosted on behalf of the Future Minerals Forum, where our panel will explore how Africa is leading a new global mineral standard. As the world moves deeper into electrification and digital transformation, copper remains essential, yet the global supply chain still lacks a unified, transparent and sustainable sourcing framework. That is now changing through leadership from Riyadh and the African Copperbelt. The Future Minerals Forum, together with the African Minerals Strategy Group, has driven the development of a first-of-its-kind technical specification submitted to the International Standards Organization, or ISO, to trace copper from mine to market, a significant step that elevates supplier nations as global rule shapers. But before we dive into today's conversation, just a few quick housekeeping notes. You'll find the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Please post your questions there at any time. Our panelists will do their best to cover as many as possible during the discussion. The chat is also open for your comments and insights. We encourage you to share your thoughts there. Just remember though, questions go in the Q&A and conversations in the chat. The session is also being recorded and we'll share the link with you afterwards. We are also streaming live on YouTube and that link will be posted in the chat once it's available. So with that, let me introduce you to today's panel. The discussion will be facilitated by Aldo Pennini, the Director of Strategy, Program and Content at Future Minerals Forum, while the panelists include Mercè Hernández, the Technical Program Manager for the International Standards Organization and the Secretariat Lead for Critical Minerals Work, and Patrick Mulindwa, the Chief of Staff of the African Minerals Strategy Group. I invite you now to sit back and enjoy the discussion as our panelists unpack the latest developments and their implications for the minerals sector. So I'll hand over now to you, Aldo, from Future Minerals Forum to begin the proceedings.
Thank you very much, Shannon, and welcome to all registered participants, Creamer Media, for hosting this webinar. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk to this audience about an area of work we have been developing at the Future Minerals Forum for the last couple of years. I'm delighted to be joined by Mercè, Ferrés, Hernández and Patrick Mulindwa, the colleagues who have been part of this effort. We'll have a conversation about the work we've been doing and very happy to answer any questions. But let me just kick off by setting out what our objectives are for this conversation. One, first of all, is to make you aware of the work we have been doing around sustainability and traceability in particular. Also to give you a bit of a heads up about where we're taking this conversation into 2026, and in particular the next FMF, the Future Minerals Forum, to be held in Riyadh from the 13th to the 15th of January. And by the way, let me just make a plug for the FMF. If you haven't already done so, please register for the event. We'd be delighted to have you join the conversations next month. The other thing I want to highlight is why this issue of traceability and why copper. Why does it matter? Why now? One of the challenges identified a couple of years back by the Future Minerals Forum, and in particular, I need to underline this, our ministerial roundtable, This is a gathering of approximately 90 governments, mainly at ministerial level. And what I mean ministerial are mineral resources ministers from around the world have been coming together for the past few years here in Riyadh and looking at what are the key challenges facing the minerals sector globally and how do we work together to overcome those challenges. Sustainability was top of the agenda. And within that, this issue of enhancing responsible supply, and to do so accompanied by transparency and traceability. And so we set about trying to define a work plan on this issue of responsible supply. And to do so in a way that reflects supplier country realities. So one of the things about the Future Minerals Forum is that we bring together countries from the whole of Africa, Western Asia, Central Asia, South America, North America, East, North, and Southeast Asia, as well as Australasia. And so we're very much a space that brings together the supply world, but also the customer world. And on the supply side, one of our ambitions is to provide these countries, the supply countries, with a voice in the rule setting for mineral supply. So this notion of from rule takers to rule shapers speaks to that desire. And over the last few years, that's been bearing out. And I think Patrick and Mercè can attest to this as far as the not just the ministerial roundtable conversations that we've been having, but the broader conference, the FMF conference, which, by the way, is very much a leadership forum. We bring together ministers and largely CEOs from across the value chain and investor community and other key stakeholder groups. So with that in mind, we designed what we call a sustainability framework, founded on 4 key pillars that we believe reflect the aspirations of supplier countries. Those pillars are: 1, development, leveraging mineral supply and mineral endowments for economic, social, and other developmental objectives in supplier countries. Number 2, capacity. The way to get there is to build not just the human capital capacity, but also the physical capacity and institutional capacity of supplier countries to enable them to develop the minerals industries of the future. Number 3 is collaboration. None of this would happen or will happen without the various stakeholders working together, whether it be the governments with industry, governments with governments, and other stakeholder groups. And the 4th pillar is performance. And what we zeroed in on the performance side is the transparency piece. And within that, looking at the mechanism or the tool of traceability, and Mercè will take us into more detail on that. But we having zeroed in on traceability as a key priority, we then looked at, okay, how do we take this forward and where do we take this forward? And so this is where we began a conversation about what are the priority minerals for the energy transition, for development, for to enable the digital revolution, to supply the minerals for the emerging security demands. And we identified 7 key corridors as part of that work. 5 of those corridors, and by the way, this is an initial list of corridors, of course that will grow over time, but the initial 7 include 5 in the African continent, with copper top of the list, and 2 in South America with lithium and rare earth elements on those lists. And we developed this list on the basis of corridors that are important for those key sort of developmental and energy transition objectives, but also we wanted to determine what are the key enablers of those corridors. So we zeroed in on infrastructure, the funding of infrastructure as the key enabler. And if we look at the Copperbelt in Africa, we identified power as one of the key elements. So our efforts started looking towards that Copperbelt region of Africa, and we took a view that could serve as a space for piloting some of the work we've been doing through in terms of the initiatives work of the Future Minerals Forum, traceability being one of them. So when you hear us talk about Copperbelt, when you hear us talk about priority corridors, when you hear us talk about capacity building and traceability, the logic is that we zero in on this African Copperbelt region to serve as a place where some of this work could be piloted, the learnings of which could be applied in other key corridors. And so that led to a conversation about should this work be housed? Where could it be taken forward? And we were fortunate enough to have Mercè and ISO, the International Standardization Organization, in our working groups. By the way, I should stress that all of this work has not been done in isolation. It's been an effort by more than 130 people nominated, representing more than 40 countries, many of them nominated by governments participating in the FMF. And these are largely experts from public and private sectors, as well as mining companies, that have come together to help us shape all these the initiatives that I'm referring to. So the work that we are talking about today is the outcome of the efforts of quite a large group of people. And if we talk also about the organizations, in this particular context, you're talking about the ICMM, the International Council on Mining and Metals, IRMA, we're talking about the OECD, we're talking about a range of other stakeholders, NRGI, the International Copper Association, the Copper Mark. So all players that have done a lot of work in the rule setting, standard setting space, all together trying to define a way forward that sort of streamlines, integrates, and provides a voice for supply regions in this rulemaking. And so the ISO, if I can put it this way, kindly offered to try to at least try and take on this work. And there's a whole process associated with that. So in September this year, through the Saudi Standards Organization, on behalf of the Future Minerals Forum, a project was submitted to the International Standardization Organization to request the development of an international traceability standard, an international traceability standard for copper. So our ambition is for that standard to be developed over time and to serve as a model of potential replication with other minerals globally. So with that in mind, I'd like to now bring in Mercè Hernández from the ISO to tell us a bit more about why copper on the one hand, but also what the global demand outlook is looking like and supply concentrations. What are some of the gaps in the existing standards ecosystem, and how can ISO help us navigate this space? Mercè, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aldo, and thank you to Creamer Media for inviting me to take part in this panel today. So why copper? I think you somehow covered it. I mean, it's a fundamental element that is indispensable, that is necessary for the global energy transition and for the efforts of electrification, digitalization. Without copper, none of this can happen. Another thing is also because of that precisely, so the global demand for copper has been growing over the past decades, and it is expected to continue to grow. And so numbers vary slightly, but it is expected that the global demand for copper will rise by 40% by 2040. So that I believe this is what explains why copper, and it has been identified as such as a priority by the Future Minerals Forum, as you were saying, Aldo. So it is, I think, there's a particularities of copper when we think of how it is produced. So it is produced in many countries, with Africa, the Copperbelt you were referring to, so DRC and Zambia, but also South America, namely Peru and Chile, where they hold some of the largest reserves of copper. It happens in diverse geological settings, which result in different kind of deposits. Some are deeper, some are closer to the surface. And this in turn results in different mining ways to extract this copper, different mining methods, which can range from large-scale underground operations and large-scale open pits to some more small-scale and artisanal methods to collect this copper, including the surface collection when we come to talk about artisanal mining. And so it is all this diversity of producing copper and the fact that it is so essential that I believe in the end so has led to see, okay, so a fundamental thing is ensuring how we make sure that things are properly done, right? We know all the challenges that come with this. So there are already some frameworks that exist, some frameworks that are used to track copper. So traceability is really this ability to track the movement of, in this case, its copper through the supply chain. And this includes the ability to identify the origin of the material and the processing history. And this is what allows to demonstrate, like if we go back to the origin and we can demonstrate, and we know that these mining companies are following ESG principles and they're having a responsible operation and production of copper, then this allows to guarantee that in the downstream sector, for example, that the copper they are using has been produced responsibly. So that is the interest of having a traceability model. And there are a number of traceability models that already exist that are being currently successfully used to demonstrate to have the responsible production of copper. But the ambition of this proposed standard to be developed in ISO is really to provide one global harmonized framework that could be used for all the settings that I have been describing. So all over the world and for all kind of mining modes of extracting copper, of producing copper. So this is meant to be one of the strengths of this model, that it is meant to really to be a harmonized model that can be implemented in all settings producing copper.
And Mercè, if I just may sort of jump in briefly, is it fair to say that the ISO, one of the good things about having ISO is that it's a highly respected international organization. The standards are voluntary, but if you have the ISO stamp on something, it counts, right? It gives confidence. That something is being produced responsibly, and this whole notion, and maybe Patrick can have has a word about this. The whole one of the rationales for doing this work also is to enhance investor confidence in countries that sometimes face reputational or country risk challenges. So it's an opportunity to create somewhat of a more level playing field, to tell a more accurate story of particular parts of the world, in this case the Copperbelt, but to increase that confidence. So Patrick, would you have something to add to that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Aldo. And I want to thank everyone that is taking time to participate on this webinar. And Aldo, if you will allow me to just do a small introduction. To every one of us who is watching from wherever you are. I'm in Kampala, Uganda, and it's the afternoon. So good afternoon from here. My name is Patrick Mulindwa. I'm the Chief of Staff of the Africa Mineral Strategy Group. I also double as the CEO of the Africa Responsible Mineral Sourcing Initiative. Aldo, I want to agree that the gathering comes at a pivotal moment for Africa's mineral sector, particularly copper. The resource holds immense potential for the continent's industrial economic transformation. The reality is clear. Africa's copper export market is highly concentrated within about 10 countries, for nearly which together do almost like 98% of the total export value. And that includes DRC, Zambia, and the other countries along the belt. So most of these exports flow from these countries to either Asia, Middle East, especially China, the UAE, and India. So this reflects the global demand for copper in manufacturing, construction, and emerging clean energy technologies. Now, despite our continent's abundant copper resource, The majority of the value addition, smelting, refining, and manufacturing is still done abroad, limiting local industrial benefits and potential for sustainable growth. And if I could pick it up from where you dropped, Aldo, is traceability beyond certification, which is not basically a compliance requirement. Once it is traced, it's an assurance for fair value for producers as producing countries. Major challenges that producer countries have faced beyond even the energy transition minerals, which has happened, evident, especially in the precious metals, is the issue of smuggling. So the revenue leakages. Most of the mining communities are ASM, they're artisanal. So the effort of the certification, beyond certification, includes the formalization of these communities. That means strengthening governance and regulatory oversight. So then it comes to boosting investor confidence, because we've been talking about it, that the investors do source money from the global market, money markets. The money comes with a lot of rules on it. But above all, that the producer countries now are moving, as Africans are moving beyond just producing, that we want to retain some value at home. Then delivers environmental and social safeguards. The only way we can ensure that a mine, that a place that has been dug over time, the only assurance that once we have exploited the mineral, what happens to the land? When a mine is opened, usually the community has a low numbers of settlements in terms of people. When the mine is opened, business activities boom, then it invites quite a number of communities that live around the mine, and they permanently stay in this place even when the mine is depleted. So you have encroachment environment. So sustainability beyond the mine can only be assured under certification. Thank you. I wanted to keep it there.
That's great. That's a great intro there, Patrick. And I guess back to you, Mercè, having heard what Patrick just outlined, if you could set out a bit more about the ISO processes, its neutrality, consensus building approach, and technical robustness, as well as how this process, and if you could tell us a little bit more about the process side of things, how the supply country voice will be incorporated.
Yeah, so ISO, in fact, it's a platform. It's a forum for discussion. We do really welcome experts from a range of stakeholders and countries to meet together and to find what we know as the highest common denominator possible, what they can agree as the optimal solution to address a global issue, right? That this is what the standard is meant to be. So we welcome participation for all that. We have 170 member bodies today that can join any technical committee. So just maybe to mention that every standard is developing an ISO technical committee, and that the proposal that has been submitted for this model for traceability of copper has been assigned to ISO TC 308. This is the technical committee on chain of custody. And so ISO will offer in its platform a kind of a private environment, electronic environment for the people that the member bodies will nominate to be part of the discussion, of the technical discussion, and to develop the standard, to be able to meet and to be able to have this discussion to go through the development of the standard. So for that, they are supported by a range of IT tools that allow them to circulate the documents, to comment on the draft, to collect comments, to resolve the comments, to have a formal approval of the draft, to gather at meetings, and so on. And it's part of this platform, right? I mean, so ISO has been developing standard for 75 years now, and this is really our job, and the organization is meant to help the experts to achieve to do so. An important thing is that we have a very robust process that allows to go through a series of steps that help build consensus. This notion of consensus is very important to us. And in ISO in particular, what we have is what we know as a double layer of consensus, which means that first, the experts that will be gathering to try to develop the standard to find a solution to the issue that the standard is meant to address, they will have to have their expert consensus. And at later stages, then we will also ask the countries to find their own consensus by countries before they finally approve the standard. And this is part of the robustness of the process of ISO. And a very important thing maybe also is that the rules for drafting the standard, it's a document, and it's a document that is meant to be implemented subsequent times and by various actors. And it is very important, therefore, that the document, it must be understood exactly in the same way by everybody so that everyone can implement it. And therefore, we have very strict rules also for drafting the document so that we make sure that this at the end is very concise, specific, precise document that really gives the guidance, it describes the best practice to achieve something. In this case, it would be to demonstrate the traceability of copper in a way that can be implemented and understood by all actors in the same manner.
And I guess just to jump in here, Mercè, in a historical moment where we have unprecedented demand for minerals, as you alluded to earlier on copper, we have a whole raft of countries effectively coming into the supply chain at various stages of development, not to mention regulatory frameworks at various stages of maturity. And I guess the question is, how can such a standard developed by ISO help these countries develop the legal regimes and regulatory processes? And is it a more streamlined way, one-stop shop for seeing, learning where the best the best practice can be secured and at least at a standard level? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, so the ISO standards, by definition, they are a voluntary implementation. There is nobody forces anybody to implement an international standard. However, what happens then, typically, is that this international standard that we produce, the member bodies, they adopt it as a national standard. They put it in the collection of national standards. And very often then they can make a reference, they can reference to the standard in the national legislation. At this point, when the standard is referenced in legislation, then it becomes of mandatory implementation because it has become part of the law. And the advantage when you have a number of countries that, because they adopt the international standard nationally, which they can refer in the regulation, you have therefore different countries that make reference to the same technical solution to be then followed, mandatory, it becomes mandatory, and then this tends to harmonize the international legislatory framework, and this is something that may be particularly desirable for activities that are cross-border, such as the production and commerce of copper, for example.
If maybe, thank you so much, Aldo. If I could appreciate Mercè for a wonderful submission. Aldo and every one of us who is on especially has experience in Africa, is that each single African country is going through a policy review session or process, especially in the mining sector. And the advantage we get with such a standard, and like I mentioned earlier, if I didn't, that the African Mineral Strategy Group was established by African countries. And in a special way, this was at the sidelines of the Future Minerals Forum in Saudi Arabia. So Saudi and the GCC become such a very strategic partner in the new development agenda of African minerals. The silos in the policy is where we are using this as a gateway, an international standard, which is targeting a series of producers in a corridor. So the African Mineral Strategy Group's mandate also includes strengthening governance across Africa, especially in the African mineral sector, aligning minerals with national and continental development priorities. I want to think that we've had in the past that almost every African country now is establishing a national mining company. which is a good thing in a good direction. But if you look at the distribution of the major producers of copper in Africa, you've got the DRC, Zambia, Tanzania. So now there are those who are directly into the copper belt. But when you look at South Africa and Namibia and Morocco, these ones, South Africa and Namibia, Morocco is spread up north in Africa. So we think that the standard will facilitate the vision of supporting, promoting beneficiation, which is an ongoing ambitious approach by African countries, promoting beneficiation and local value addition through mineral development hubs. These are joint facilities, joint effort. There's recently something that has happened within iron ore. It is happening between Kenya and Uganda. But when you look at, one of the low hangings, the deliverables of the corridor through the standard, again in the Copperbelt, is power. So when there's electricity, there's more things that can happen. What we are pushing for as AMSG is that countries may not need in any way to go silo into policy. We may have to bring efforts together. If we are supplying a one market, why don't we do pre-processing through the mineral hubs together? Then traceability is done jointly. The borders are open. We could put it where power is, if let's say the power plant is in DRC or it is in Zambia. So these two supply to one point. So investment is distributed and the benefit is also shared equally.
And Patrick, just building on that, the AMSG has been doing some work in this space for a while now, the Pennini platform. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What are the challenges you're facing there? And also, a key question we've been grappling with over the past couple of years, as we look at this notion of rule takers to rule shapers, how do we go about reflecting those local realities? How do we encourage more countries to be part of the conversation and to articulate what their challenges are? Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Aldo. So 2024, it's been a marathon. I mean, because the challenges in the mining sector and the opportunities every day show up. For example, the challenges and opportunities in the precious metals, and then the opportunities that show up every day in the energy transition. But then the countries say we've got potential. The money markets say we need a standard before we give you money. We should ensure that our money does not get into causing conflict in any way. So we looked at the low-hanging opportunities and the need for the market. That's where we went into the Pennini blockchain traceability. The solution is still under development, but like I said earlier, is that what we have is that recently most of the members each was developing a solution. And what we've been able to successfully do is that through our membership countries, which are in East Africa, SADC, for example, East Africa, we've got Uganda, we've got Kenya, we've got Burundi, DRC, as you know, DRC doubles in SADC as well. We've got countries in SADC. Malawi is in there, Zimbabwe is in there, and recently we went into the Maghreb. You have the Mauritania, and then recently Morocco, which is coming on board. The challenge we saw is that every country seems to be working on something, and in the areas of we want to locally beneficiate. The investments were stuck at a wall of we cannot send the investment there because we don't have any assurance this investment will be deployed in a responsible way. So we came in with the solution, the initiative, the Africa Responsible Mineral Sourcing Initiative. And this is basically providing a gateway of we can all pool our supplies, our production, our local realities and formalize informal ASMs. We deploy all the solutions, this one solution to solve a one problem. So if I could say, What is the current challenge that provides the opportunity is that the beauty is once we on board since last year and the meetings we've been having in Riyadh is that there seems to be a unanimous agreement that we need to take a one direction on a specific mineral and below the value chains. So that is an advantage, at least there's a turnaround. The politics of governments that change and the ministries are restructured. If you know recently that happened in Malawi, the ministry and other departments, the ministry was shrinked into one. So these are some of the challenges that we face. And we believe that platforms at FMF will basically provide us an advantage to continue, championing the voice of we must convene the effort into one vehicle. So that's the reality. The reality is that the ASMs are everywhere. The ASMs need to be the value. For example, I was watching a documentary 7 years ago in Zambia, where a company had to move a community, and the communities that seem not to really the value, the attachment of the community of where they live, they've lived for over time. The value of the investment. So being able to negotiate opportunity versus the tradition, So the money markets and investment, understanding that these are not just simple things to actually deal with. So the opportunity we provided is that the African Mineral Strategy Group is providing a gateway through the solutions. I know that the Madini solution should be under deployment early next year, but the efforts on ASM formalization are ongoing. We've held quite a number of stakeholder engagements on ASM formalization. The countries are doing something, but we believe that we needed a project to champion a linkage from the efforts in the continent, from the producer countries to the market. And for me, I think that the copper belt, the ISO standard, the efforts by AMSG, this is going to bring us some values, some results soon. Because what we need in the continent is investment. Above all, responsible investment. We did not have some structures, to be honest, they were not there. The distribution of understanding how the markets have always sourced, how the producers, how the manufacturers have always sourced these minerals. The understanding was minimal. What we've done is that we are quickly bridging this gap to understand that these are the aspirations of our members as African countries. They want to add value at home, in that way retain some value. Have a clear pathway of how the ASMs are connected to the small and medium producers. And that becomes a collective export. That becomes a collective point of value addition, value retention, job creation, environmental protection and rehabilitation after mining. So it's a I should say that it's been too much of a year. Number one, understanding the stage at which all our members are in a specific value chain, in this case, if they are copper producers. It's been a journey throughout a year, and I would say that Aldo would be a witness on this. We've been traveling to these countries and going to the ground to understand the national efforts. The alignment is right. The formations in terms of restructuring agencies so that they fit into the national agendas is right, but how to link these African ambitions to the investment, to the industries? How do we invite some of the industries to do pre-processing at home? But do you have some kind of like environment that do facilitate that? And we talked about some of the outcomes of the corridor, which is going to be electricity, the infrastructure that facilitates. So that is the reality in the producing countries. And I should say that we were lucky establishing in Saudi, FMF being able to convene all these global major movers of these key metals. It was a great learning space, and it has provided us a quick turnaround in terms of solutions. Aldo, I want to keep it at that.
Right. And maybe at this point we can bring Mercè into the discussion. And given what Patrick has sort of articulated just now, what are your thoughts on two things? One is how the work we are kicking off with the ISO sends some sort of signal to the stakeholder community, and two, not just to the global community, but to a signal to your constituency, Patrick, in terms of this is their opportunity to have a real say in the shaping of a very important rule or rules. How do you see that panning out? Because this will be important for us to understand as ISO then tries to involve as many as possible. And that process has started, and maybe, Mercè, you can talk a little bit about that. How do we get this wheel moving and getting the right people in the process?
Yeah, maybe just to start with a complement to what Patrick was saying, and in terms of the content of the standard, or the expected content, is that it will offer what is known in the standard as maturity levels. We cannot specify the same requirements to big mining companies and to small scale or artisanal mining in terms of documenting the traceability. So by offering this kind of maturity levels, it will allow the different actors, the different organizations to adopt really a development path that will reflect the realities and their capabilities. And then so in this sense, the standard is meant to be like a tool for progress rather than just a barrier to entry market, right? And I think that this is one of the strengths of the standard. It's this kind of harmonization that takes into account everybody. And then, so with that, it is meant that the standard should be implementable by all these scales of mining, of copper producers. And for that, indeed, Aldo, it is indispensable. They have to be part of the development of the standard. And this is actually one of the key strategic priorities in ISO, which is known as the all voices heard. We need to hear all the voices, and the voices of those who will be implementing the standard. They have to be in the side of the development of the standard. So in ISO, we do have lots of programs and ways to try to attract, to help to build the capacity of developing countries, for example, to be part of the discussion in ISO and to join us. And this is something that, of course, my colleagues that are in charge of this in ISO will be working at. We are contacting already a number of countries that would be interested to be part of the development of the project. Just first thing is we have to raise awareness. We have to go through a campaign of raising awareness, because people sometimes simply they don't know. Oh, I didn't know that there was a standard under development. So we have to really raise awareness, and we are working on this. And we hope to attract the countries and the actors, and within the countries, the range of stakeholders that are affected by this project, and that can take benefit of this project. So in terms of technicalities, as you were asking, yeah. So it is very important to note that in ISO, we will not develop a standard unless there is a real demonstrated global market need. And this is something that we have to test. This is what is known in ISO as the test of the global relevance. And so how does this work? So the proposal that has been submitted to develop this standard, it has been vehiculated by SASO, which is the member body for Saudi Arabia in ISO. And it has been submitted to the Technical Committee 308, as I was mentioning earlier. This is the Technical Committee for Chain of Custody. This is, it has been identified as the most suitable home in ISO that can gather the expertise to develop the standard. And so we are going through this test for the global relevance in this committee now. The proposal has been submitted, and this is a form, which is known, the technical term is the Form 4, that documents the why of this, the reason for this standard. What is the purpose, the justification to develop this standard? It's very well documented. We describe what is the scope, of the standard, what the standard is expected to achieve, who should be there, who should be present in developing and contributing to the development of the standard. And it is accompanied, this form, it is accompanied with an initial outline of the project. And then, countries that are members of DC 308, of this technical committee, they have 12 weeks to assess the proposal and to engage with their national stakeholders. They need to communicate about the proposal, they need to get their feedback, and they need to position themselves as to whether they will support and contribute to the participation of the development of the standard or not. And it's going to be the outcome of this test that will determine if the project can proceed. So that's why we are having some campaigns, promotional campaigns, informative campaigns, informing about the development of this project, because it is very important to hear the voice of all these countries, the positioning of their stakeholders about to support the development of the project. And just to note that this exercise of testing the global relevance will remain open until the 24th of February. Mm-hmm. So anyone that would be interested to be part of this would have to go through their national standard body. So this is the member of the country, the member of ISO in the country. It's the big standardization organization in the country. And they are the ones that have to bring the response to ISO as to whether they support and they are willing to contribute to the project or not. And we have to go through, raising awareness about the project in order to try to, it's important to have this awareness to be able to make an informed decision then as to whether the project is to be continued or not. Yeah.
Yeah, and Aldo, if I may add a little bit, thank you so much, Mercè. Part of the because you see the perception over time around standards, in this case in the mining sector, the understanding was that these standards were kind of like a limitation, which later on, became. I mean, what I appreciate in this approach is that the presentation of the ISO standards for the Copperbelt as not just as a compliance requirement. And I would mention this for the benefit of our audience, is that there's wonderful work that is being done, through the FMF efforts and AMSG, is that through our initiative, the Africa Responsible Mineral Sourcing Initiative, like I said earlier, that we looked at the low hangings. So there were low hangings in the precious metals, and we've been able to provide some quick results within that. Access to markets where producers most of the African producers, beyond the diamond, the Kimberley process, at least the associations have a meeting somewhere in Dubai. But when you look at other metals, like the precious metals like gold, we've been able to create some direct access into market through the engagements that we hold annually in Dubai. We want to make sure that FMF in this case becomes the same. In this case, copper, as we will add on other metals, but in this case with copper. And our efforts start from the roots. In supporting the national efforts of formalizing the ASMs, because usually the standards are easy to be understood by the large producers, the large-scale producers. What we are advising the government is, in the ASM formalization, is to twin these producers, through providing centralized facilities, let's say for smelting, refining, and traceability, so that the traceability becomes an obvious. But if you're smelting, if the ASM groups are smelting at a large-scale producer facility, not just as a group of suppliers, but as part of the commitment to the sourcing standards of producing producers. So we are treating the ASMs and the large scale not just as outgrowers, just suppliers to the large scale, but as a pathway to make sure that in the formalization of the ASM, supporting them, and then ensuring that traceability. Because at one point, technology deployment is easy. At one point, skilling the ASM, so we bring them to the standard of the large-scale producer, or qualifying them to meet the standard of the large-scale producer's standard to the supplier, it becomes easy. Now, investment. It is easy to route investment through the large-scale producer, which goes down to the ASM producers. So for us, this is, I think, an opportunity to unlock, because most of the producers across Africa, in all metals, name them, are ASMs. We cannot deal away with the ASMs because that's the reality. Those are the communities. We will not jump to, we want to give away this mine, all this. We are encouraging governments that don't do that. Let's have a coexistence of a formalized ASM attached to a large-scale producer. And then we can deploy these solutions. And it's a responsibility of the large-scale producer as a way of commitment to these traceabilities and the standards. Then investment. I just wanted to add that, Mercè.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Your point on skills is a lovely segue into one of the questions we have on the chat. I'm just mindful of time with all these things that they races away when you're in a good conversation. But I wanted to sort of raise with you both, and this is a question from Samuel Kabaka Hornell. What are the skills we believe to be most important in this field over the next few years? Who would like to have a go at that?
Marcel, do you want to go first?
I don't have the answer, I'm afraid, to this question. I think what seems to be reassuring for me is the fact that the standard aims to cover all scales. And then, yeah, I don't know if you have maybe more elements of response.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Aldo. And I want to appreciate the person that has asked the question. The reality is that the ASMs do informally, because it's not formal employment, they do informally employ so many young people, mothers. It's a livelihood for so many. And this year, at one of the engagements in Nigeria, we agreed to have an approach of a skills empowerment program for the ASMs. And in this case, it could be just technical skills in ore identification and geology basics, mining techniques, extraction methods, sample collections and testing. And above all, because the cases of safety in the ASMs, I mean, we've had some of these, you've seen the videos going around in key mining communities of the ASMs. So health and safety and environment, the use of personal protective equipment, it's not because they can't afford it, but because there's no standard to the work. If this was among the prerequisites, that if you were to supply a 1 kg or a 1 ton to this company, this is what you have to tick. Safe handling of explosives or chemicals, environmental management, emergency preparedness, So we are testing out with the vocational training institutions. And I'll tell you that I would inform the audience here that Uganda, I attended a meeting, I think, last month with, the Technical and Vocational Skills Council, where they want an input of which skills would be, designed specifically for the ASMs. So this becomes part of our traceability, commitments. So like I've mentioned in there, the tools and equipment they're using, it would be easy if government or in any way an investment commitment, equipment that is hosted by a large scale, but used by the miners, and they pick it every day or return it somewhere or keep it in a safe place. So for me, the skills to identify, simple technology to identify and do some bit of geology, because these are small groups working together and convening whatever they produced at one point and supplying it together as a group. Extraction methods, new simple technology that they can use. Then on traceability, we believe that with mobile handsets, they can easily onboard simple data, basic use of mobile phones, tablets, and software, if we do plug in, technology on their sites. So the data recording, the volumes extracted, location, ownership. So this becomes easy for them to run, to basically actually feed our platform, which is the Madini blockchain traceability. So we are key on the skills and we are intentional. The approach is that we are going through the technical and vocational education institutions to develop a program together, specifically for the ASMs.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And maybe if I could have a stab at one specific set of skills that have been made aware of, is as we think of traceability, we also should also think about the whole certification process. Yes. So the verification that the standards have been applied. And one of the areas where skill sets are lacking, particularly in the African continent, is in the certification space. There are not enough people with the skills required to certify. And that is quite a significant gap, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. So you have organizations that specialize in certification, a number of them European organizations that have been operating in the continent for a long time.
Yes.
Tuksud and others that are looking to set up training programs for certifiers, and they need quite a few of them. This is an emerging space, and I suspect, Mercè, keen to hear your thoughts on this, whether having a global standard, the first global standard on a mineral value chain, will send a significant signal to the verifiers that we need to skill up and be ready globally to validate the performance of these value chains. And so if you're looking at your career prospects, opportunities for the future, this could be one area to think about, perhaps quite niche, but nonetheless, these are the jobs of the future that relate to responsible supply. Is there anything else you'd add to that, Mercè or Patrick?
Yeah. So the certification really it's related to the conformity assessment. Is we will verify that the requirements that are specified in the standard. The standard is a technical document. It provides technical requirements, how things have to be done, and then there is an assessment. There is a verification that this is properly done. This is the conformity assessment, and it can result, if it's done by an independent auditor, this results in a certification that compliance is met. So any conformity assessment body is able to develop a scheme for certifying the technical requirements in the standard. The current draft of the standard, the current proposal, it allows to consider developing also a certification scheme that would be the unique certification scheme that would have to be followed to certify, to demonstrate the compliance of the actors implementing the standard, that they are doing things properly. It's a possibility. It would harmonize the practice of the certification against the standard from the development side of the standard and the possible certification scheme that could come with this. This is what I can share. Now, in terms of how to develop the skills for conformity assessment bodies in Africa, or bodies that would be performing this verification of the compliance to the standard, that I cannot really comment. So the possibility is there to harmonize the scheme. We have to go through very specific rules in ISO to achieve so, but it is doable. It harmonizes the practice of demonstrating the conformity to the standard. for the skills, I think I am turning more to Patrick for the question.
Thank you so much, Mercè.
Yeah,
and Aldo, the issue of training is honestly very important. And I would say that I think the approach would be that there are a few institutions that have been doing this, but because this is a new approach, I think we could, make use of the community that we have, of the different entities that are part of this, to come up with a blueprint for the COPPA certification training and accreditation for any entity that would want to take up this as a training. So they should be, we define the purpose and scope to establish the governance and legal frameworks, and then developing the training curriculum, So then we can have a point of where we say that which agencies can we accredit to carry on the training, because the training institutions do exist, but then we need to do some work around developing the curriculum and then having them, bring over, which we could have as TOTs, and then the certification and the licensing that they need to start carrying out this training, because it will be very important.
Great, Patrick. And I guess on that note, we're coming towards the end of our conversation, and I'd like to start to draw it all together. I guess to start with, to thank both of you for taking part in this discussion. I'll come back to both of you in a minute. But in terms of the key takeaways from today's conversation, number one is that there is the shaping of a new international traceability standard for copper in the works, and that this is going to be an important development for mineral supply, not just in copper, but other minerals over time. It will hopefully, and this is a big underlying hope, that over time it will streamline the whole reporting of responsible supply, where currently you have a myriad of standards that are response effectively to a market failure or market failures, that the time is now to start to sort of consolidate. And the process has started. This is nothing new. The industry itself has led the way in a lot of this. But what we're saying, it's time for governments to also step in and start, we are from rule takers to rule shapers, and start through the standards organizations helping industry as well to integrate, streamline. We are building on top of things, not creating new ones, right? That's the important message to deliver here. Acknowledge the work that's already taken place, improve, build on, streamline, and bring the local perspectives into the conversation. So this is going to be a really important development. It'll be quietly done over the next couple of years, but I'd encourage all of you to keep an eye out for this work, and also be involved if you have the requisite expertise to contribute to the discussion. So it's a call to action on yourselves to raise your hand if you feel you can add something to the conversation. The other thing I'd like to add is that alongside the standard development, we are continuing work on a capacity building project. So we touched on some of this through the conversation, skills requirements and ASM and the whole capacity building theme is very important here. So the FMF, through our working groups, are starting to develop, to scope out what a capacity building project could look like on traceability, to help the Copperbelt, in this case, the Copperbelt countries, equip themselves with what's required to deliver on the standard, right? And that's obviously a government, industry, and multi-stakeholder. The last thing I'd say before I hand back to the team for some final comments is that as we look ahead to the Future Minerals Forum in January 2026, and just to recap the dates, the 13th, 14th, or 15th of January in Riyadh. So again, you're invited to attend. Please register. But what will be important there is that the work that's been undertaken now by ISO will be reported back to the ministerial roundtable on the 13th of January. So that will be a feedback loop over time that will help ensure that this project is on track and that all the stakeholders are having a say. So keep an eye out for that conversation. For now, I'd like to hand back to Mercè and Patrick. Are there any final comments, messages you'd like to leave the team before we wrap up?
Right. I think
Mercè, would you like to have a go first?
Yeah, I think well, first, I enjoyed a lot being part of this discussion, and I learned a lot, and for that I am really grateful. I think for me, it's that we are not in isolation. We have to consider that there's many people that are interested with that, many organizations. There's a lot of knowledge already around this, and it's important that we are united, that we stay together, and yeah, to move forward, hopefully, the development of this standard, and yeah. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marcel, and thank you so much, Aldo. So as we close for this important discussion, I would like to leave us with some thoughts, and I want to thank you so much again for bringing this conversation, especially in the line where today morning I said something crossed my mind. I said the next Africa is metal, so it kept on rephrasing, and I said the next Africa is metallic. So the next Africa is actually metallic. But first, we are at a point, a pivotal moment in the history of Africa's mineral sector. The world is demanding transparency, responsible and sustainable supply chains. And Africa has the opportunity to shape the rules, not just to follow them. And I want to send this message to every one of us. I mean, even if you don't live in a continent, but for some reason the company you work for or the agency you work with has something, or it's either sourcing or financing in the continent to either source. So I'm not speaking to people of the African continent only. Second, we must consolidate our standards and strengthen the collaborations. Fragmentation in the standards and compliance frameworks, creating inefficiencies and risk. Our next step must be to unite standards organizations. And Aldo, how I wish in our discussions beyond just Marcel's presentation, that all these standards organizations that will be available could be invited, so that we have some kind of like it's kind of like a direction, because the distribution in standards has also delayed quite a lot of wonderful progress. We must ensure that Africa's traceability systems are both aligned with global best practices and grounded in local realities. To be honest, at many cases, we've not done well as a continent, but also at other cases, the other world has not done well, because most of these standards have not had a lens, and that's what we are providing, a solution through our Africa Responsible Mineral Sourcing Initiative, to provide a local reality in most of these, approaches. We must bring local perspectives to the global stage, and I want to thank the FMF, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for this effort. Traceability is more than a technical requirement. It's a development tool. To be effective, it must reflect the realities of artisanal miners, local communities, regional infrastructure. So I want to thank you so much. MSD remains committed through the initiatives, the local mineral development hubs. We are so committed to the Copperbelt, and through the solutions, the blockchain solutions, we know that with technology, we will get there. So thank you so much.
And on that note, I'd like to thank Mercè Hernández from my side and Patrick Mulindwa from the African Mineral Strategy Group, as well as Creamer Media for hosting this webinar, and particularly to yourselves, those of you who participated in the conversation, for listening in. We invite you to continue the discussion, be privy to the discussion at the Future Minerals Forum, again from the 13th to the 15th of January 2026. And for now, we look forward to having a further conversation, providing a further update on this important project in the near future. For now, thank you very much and all the best.
Thanks so much, Aldo. That brings us to the end of the discussion. We send our thanks to moderator Aldo Pennini for an engaging discussion on the Future Minerals Forum and a new ISO traceability standard. Thank you also very much to our panelist, Patrick Mulindwa from the African Minerals Strategy Group and Mercè Hernández from the International Standards Organization. Thank you very much to the Future Minerals Forum for making this webinar possible, and also to the attendees for taking the time to join us. We really hope you enjoyed it. The Future Minerals Forum is taking place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia from 13 to 15 January 2026. It aims to drive global impact through knowledge, partnerships and action. Find out more at futuremineralsforum.com. And finally, the recording of today's webinar will be sent to you in due course. But if you have any additional questions, please be in touch. You can reach us at shannon@creamermedia.co.za. Thank you so much for your time. Stay well and goodbye.